Hello and welcome back, and that's right, it is time to go through and compare my top 4 SSDs in terms of loading time all together on the same screen. Before we go any further though, let's knock out a few disclaimers because it's always going to be tough making a video like this. But first and foremost, why did I pick these 4? Why are they in my top 4? Well, no one of these 4 SSDs is the best for upgrading that slot on your PS5. It has to be said, indeed, each one of these 4 has been picked for their own preset reason that actually makes them better than the others. The Seagate Firecuda 530 is probably the highest performing and most enduring of all 4 of these SSDs, and that's how that one made the cut. The WD Black SN850 is the most highly recommended by so many people out there, and it also arrives arguably at the best price point of any of the SSDs that we talk about here. The Samsung 980 Pro, that is in my third choice there, and again, there's no hierarchy here, I'm just going by the number I'm saying it. The Samsung 980 for me is the best value choice between all of them because it is actually better performing than that of the WD Black, even though it is an incredibly similar price point, although not quite as low priced, and still hugely available because it's been around for such a long time. And finally, the Sabrent, with the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus arriving in up to an impressive 4 TB, and with sequential read performance up there with the likes of the Firecuda in an incredibly similar architecture, although because its NAND isn't quite as thick layered, it isn't quite as enduring as that out of the Seagate. And although I think it is an incredible SSD, the Sabrent, I think the Firecuda 530 is the better of those two. But the Sabrent gives you a lot of those advantages in capacity, architecture, fires on controller, and more, but still arriving at a better price point than the Seagate Firecuda. So that is why I've picked these 4 SSDs. Now, for a number of you that are wondering, where's the Gigabyte Auroras? Where's the MP600? Where's the Inland? Well, either that they didn't quite make the bench. I think the Gigabyte versus the Sabrent wins the day on points. And we've still got tests on the likes of the other PMY SSDs, the Inland, and that MP600, but quite frankly, they just haven't arrived in the studio yet. Again, you guys know the pricing and delays right now. It is making things take a lot longer. So that video is incoming, that test is incoming, but right now, of the ones I've tested, I don't think they're going to beat my opinion on these 4. Nonetheless, things can change, but that is why I've picked these 4 SSDs for this comparison. Now, in this comparison, we will be comparing the load times of many games, the majority of which you have already seen, but we are going to be comparing them side versus side. We've already compared them against the internal PS5 load SSD, and we may mention that during the course of the video, but for the most part, it is about loading each game and which one of these 4 SSDs does it the fastest. And at the end of the video, we'll do a quick wrap up where the strengths were, which one excel, which one did they not, and ultimately I hope this video helps you decide which one of these is best for your needs. It's not about which SSD is the best, remember that, because they've all got core strengths and core advantages in price, endurance, performance, availability in different parts of the world as well. So do bear that in mind, and don't just take this as a black and white reading that one is intrinsically better than the other overall. It's just not the case. But that's enough talk. Let's get straight into the video and start our comparisons. Right, so the first game is, of course, Demon's Souls. Just like my most recent test, this is a game that has incredible loading time, very fast indeed, and we tested it on all of these SSDs to pretty good success. But now's the time to see how they compare side by side. Now, what we're going to do is line this up. We're going to load from the title screen and into the world of the Nexus there, and we've got all 4 on screen now. So we've got the loading screen there, and bloody hell, that is going to be near enough impossible to gauge between them. At the end of this video, we will be doing frame analysis, don't worry, but that is going to be insanely tight there. I cannot even tell you which one was the quickest. Now we're going to load from an archstone. We're going to go from the second archstone in the game there. Let's see if we can actually distinguish anything this time. I think, where are we going here? And we're going to take, I think it's 6-7 seconds, and we are... I think the WD took that one. I'm willing to bet at the end of the video, when we go by the frame analysis, I'm willing to say that the WD Black, by a millisecond, like almost fractional, took the advantage there, but I'll be interested to see. But now let's move on to a different Archstone loading from within Demon's Souls there, as we load into the next one. And again, this is the beginning of the game from the primary Archstone coming out of it there. We got them all loading together, pretty much neck and neck right now. Let's see if we can spot a difference. Wow, that is going to be tough. I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out. I feel like maybe the bottom right of the screen, Sabrent, was the one that lit up first. But again, the analysis at the end of the video will tell us. But even now, so close to call. I mean, right now, we're going to move on to the second game here, and this is going to be Control. Sorry about the blurry screen there. I just pulled from a GIF because I didn't have stock of the title screen. But we're going to move into this game loading directly from the title screen. This is one of the first games we tested on our first barrage of tests when we're comparing against the title screen. Sorry, the internal SSD from the title screen. But for now, let's load this game up directly and see what happens. So we're loading in. It didn't take too long. They're pretty much side by side. I feel like the Sabrent, maybe something on the right hand side of the screen with loading up first. But even now, looking at these charts, now the charts are telling a different story as we go through the loading bar itself. And yeah, I think the WD Black, I'm presuming, took that one. Maybe the Samsung, I'm not sure, but I feel like the left hand side of the screen definitely took it. Has to be said, the difference is genuinely tenths of seconds between these. So if you have purchased one of these already, don't take any of this as some sort of crashing indictment. This is an incredible play there by all of the SSDs involved. So coming out of that, we go into Ratchet and Clank. And for those that saw my recent videos, you'll know that I'm loading from the start of the game and a latter portion, 20-30 minutes into the game, where there's some transitional moments there. So what we're going to do is we're going to load up both of them from a checkpoint save spot directly into the game on all 4 SSDs side by side there. So again, this is the beginning of the game from a checkpoint slot there, and they're loading together neck and neck, and I couldn't tell you. Could not tell you right now. Again, I know I keep not being helpful here, guys. At the end of the video, we will go through frame by frame, but I just wanted to go through them all together to give you the grand scope before we go through each one of these. Additionally, in some cases later in the video, and I'd say a little bit with Ratchet and Clank, I think it's going to be important to see how things run overall in case there are any kind of hidden stalls in the loading there. Sometimes you see that in open world environments, or if we see graphics not rendering right, which I appreciate at this scale of 4 being squashed together, does make it harder to see. Something I was articulating in a previous video about how to versus all of these together and still make them visible. But now let's move on to the other save spot where we are loading into that transitional area from earlier. And as we go into it, we are going to load this up. This is a semi-rail section, let's see. And it was definitely the right-hand side of the screen. So either the Seagate or the Sabrent was the quicker. We'll find out more at the analysis at the end of the video. This is an on-rails area, but we are making sure to do different things in every play window. So we're not going to compare in some cases if a piece of scenery doesn't come into shot in other games as much, because we are playing them slightly independently, but it has to be set on rails based areas like this. Then I would argue that the real trick here is that it can maintain all of this with no drops in frame rate, no difference in playback there in terms of the actual delivery, not so much what's happening on screen. And all 4 there still doing absolutely fine, but again, I feel like the right hand side of the screen is where we saw it load the quickest, either the Seagate or the Sabrent. Once again, as the end of the cutscene appears there, the right hand side of the screen is definitely ahead. So again, at the end, we'll find out more. The next game coming up, we're going into GTA 5. I mentioned this in a few videos recently. With GTA 5, it's one of those games that's been around for a very long time. It's moved from PS3 to PS4 to PS5, and it's one of the games with the slowest load time. So I wanted to see how each of these SSDs dealt with that interminable loading time there. So what we are doing is loading directly from the PlayStation's main menu and go straight into the game there. All 4 loading at the same time there. Again, slight differences there already, even though they're running parallel, all started at the same time with the recording and button linked together. But again, we can't really gauge it at this time. Again, PS4 games, even upscaled PS4 Pro games, are always tough. But I have to include them in the testing because a lot of people are still going to be playing PS4 games. And let's face it, this is still one of the most played PS4 games in the world, even in 2021. Again, I feel like the WD Black or the Firecuda is ahead here. But once again, because of that slight difference at the start there with the publisher logos, I'm slightly hesitant. We're still going to account it, but I mean, for now, the transitions here are slightly different, but they're all loading the same single player. But by a country mile, the WD Black took it there. And by a country mile, I of course mean most of a second. And I think we can all agree that all four of these did not start a second apart. So regardless if there's tenths of a seconds at the start, the WD Black definitely loaded it the fastest overall, one way or another. So it definitely did that. Next game we're going to move into, another PS4 game with a great community online, of course, Doom Eternal. By the way, it kills me that I can't play the soundtrack to this game for you guys. Incredible soundtrack. But for now, let's move in. We're going to go direct from loading from the title screen into the world. It's the one we've been using previously. All of these loading from the same save game there, directly from the desktop at exactly the same time at the title screen. As you can see, no difference between them in terms of entering that save game there. I think this is going to be a tough one to call. Definitely the right-hand side of the screen. I feel like it was a Seagate Firecuda at the top right of the screen there that took it first. Again, the analysis at the end. We've only got a couple of games left to go through before we go through the analysis there. But for me, yeah, I would say the Firecuda took the lead on that one between all of these four games on M.2 SSDs within the PS5 system. But as this ends, we're going to go into our second to last game. And again, I know it's a point of contention, but I think it's a game with a really interesting hidden loading mechanic. And that, of course, is Destruction All-Stars. It came out for PS Plus. The reason I'm including, as you see here now on screen, Destruction All-Stars is simply that it has very interesting hidden loading mechanics built into the run-up into the arenas. And this is one of those games that does have hidden load based into it. So it's one of those games that all of them could start at the same time but end at slightly different times. So it'll be interesting to see that pan out. But for now, we're going to load from the title screen into the game. So going into there, random selection, so different characters were selected, but all of them at exactly the same moment. And we're loading into it there. And what we're waiting for is when the help menu appears. That means that the loading has completed when the game fires in with a tutorial splash screen there. So that's what we're looking for as the point of load, when the splash screen appears. When they all jump off the arena, and we're waiting for the splash screen. And you know what? Nearly impossible. We're not going to count how long it took the splash screen to go away because you have to rapidly tap X. It was when it appeared. But I feel like it was the left-hand side of the screen there that took it. Again, we've only got the one game left, and then we're going to analyse all of our results game by game. And finally, we're going to go into our last game. We've seen it before. It is, of course, Resident Evil 8, otherwise known as Resident Evil Village. I say otherwise, it's pretty much the default title. This is a game that we tested earlier on, where first save, we're going to load into the castle. We've killed a few of the sisters, so Lady Demetrius is absolutely furious. And then we have the other save where we transition through several areas running through the map to make sure there's no hidden load. So the first one we're going to go for, of course, is the castle. If I remember correctly, it loads in like 2.5 seconds. So this is going to be very tough to call, I think, later on when we go through the frames there of loading. So we're going to go into the first one there. This is that Resident Evil 8 level load direct from a save spot. All of them done at exactly the same moment there. And I definitely think the Seagate Firecuda was the quickest there at the top right of the screen. I might have to again during the analysis, I will go through them there. But ultimately, I think the Seagate Firecuda took the lead between all of them by I'm not going to say much, obviously. We are still talking incredibly minor margins here all the way between them. But the next one is the whole level load, running through the whole level. Again, loading from a safe spot there. And again, yeah, definitely the Firecuda there. That's probably the second clearest difference, other than the WD GTA load earlier on. But for now, we're going to run through those levels there, and we're going to get ready to line up and go through the analysis. Now, what we're going to be doing is going through each of those load screens, and what we're looking for is the transitional moment between load and game. So for example, if we saw a loading bar, the minute the game has been introduced, even in the earliest frame, that is what we're going to call a success. So in some cases, I'm willing to bet these games are either going to be loading at exactly the same time because they were maxing every other component out, or the difference is going to be on a frame level. And in some cases, it's going to be the flicker of a light off a character's model that's going to make all of the difference where we see an outline. We've already prepared them in advance. I'm going to get them lined up now. And you're not going to see any transition here, but for me, I've got a little bit of work to do now between now and when I transition into these. So I'm going to leave you now in my mind for the next hour or so, and you're going to hear me in about 3 to 4 seconds when I come back. So let's move into the analysis part of the video. Right, so the analysis is about to begin. We've gone through them, and I'll be honest, it's been super duper tight going through these results here. Some of them particularly surprised me. And again, this isn't about who's the best or the worst, it's about how well they performed in of themselves. So straight away, out the beginning, with the very first Demon Souls one there, the WD Black loaded the fastest. At the top left of the screen there, you can see the shimmer image of the character. That is the one that took the lead there. That was loading from the title screen. So the first point there is definitely for the WD Black. If we move into the second one there, we can see there the UI loading. And once again, with the loading into the first Archstone, WD Black's SN850 is the one that took the lead there overall. It definitely kind of loaded that in, that UI, and the rest of them were just hot on its heels with the Firecuda just behind it. The third transition there, again, this is one that was a bit of a contention here. I've given both the WD Black and the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus a point here because they both loaded the UI there at the same time. Even when I went 1 frame back, they both disappeared. So that's 1 point for the Black, 1 point for the Rocket. Next, we moved into our game here, and that was Control. And for Control, the Samsung 980 was the first to load. I know it looks like they're all 3 of them on screen there, but if I go 1 frame back, there's an outline of a door on the Samsung. So the Samsung loaded Control by a frame or 2 quicker than anyone else. Next, it was the first of Ratchet Clank, and this was the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus. As you can see there at the bottom right of the screen, it did load, and again, if I go 1 frame back, then it's all black for all of them, but for me, I'm giving that point to the Rocket Plus. Moving on to the second part of Ratchet Clank, we can see that I called this one a tie between the Seagate Firecuda and the Rocket Plus, because for me, they both arrived in at the same time, and 1 frame before this was blackness. So for me, that's a point for the Firecuda and a point for the Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus. Going into GTA, I think we know what the score for that was. The WD Black by a clear margin took that one overall. And again, that puts the WD Black into a very comfortable lead right now overall between the 4 of them, as it loaded GTA 5 noticeably faster than anyone else, which brought us into the next game as we go into it there. And here again, this was another draw between the Firecuda and the Rocket 4 Plus, both with the same controller, that Farzon 18. They both managed to load into Doom quicker overall by 2 or 3 frames. In fact, it wasn't just the 1 frame there. So again, a point each for those, which brings us now into Destruction All-Stars. And this was a point for the, slightly falling behind their Samsung 980 Pro. You can see there from the menu on the screen, it introduced the help menu into the gameplay quicker than anyone else, which is how we measured when gameplay was enabled and loading had completed. So it took the lead there, taking us into Resident Evil 7. And Resident Evil 7, again, we already saw it coming. The Firecuda 530 loaded into the world the quickest. We could see that on the top right of the screen there. And the other games were only 2 or 3 frames behind it, which brings us into our last game, which was, of course, Resident Evil 7 loading into that large courtyard area, and from there we can see once again that the Firecuda 530 taking that final point and really pulling it back, because I thought the WD Black was going to win there in the end. But there you have it. That has been our SSD comparison, and all four of them, we have to be honest, have performed spectacularly well. And it doesn't matter if you purchased one of these already or you're on the cusp. This is why these are my 4 SSDs of choice. They've all performed spectacularly well, and when there has been a difference, let's be honest, it has been milliseconds, in most cases frames of difference, almost indistinguishable, as we saw for ourselves by the naked eye. Now, of course, the Samsung 980 Pro has scored slightly less on our ranking here, but do bear in mind it was a smaller capacity across all of these, with the only one being a 250 gigabyte drive due to the inability of having a larger drive. And even then, the measure of difference between them is so small as is to make absolutely no difference. So if you are looking at an SSD, just remember it's not just about the PS5 performance and the load time, because the difference between these drives is so small it doesn't matter. It's about getting a drive that best suits your needs, your budget, your requirements, your gameplay style, the amount you game, and everything. Just remember, the Seagate is the best endurance choice between all of these. The WD Black is the best priced drive and availability as well. The Samsung 980, I think, is the best value drive between them for what you're getting for your money. And the Sabrent there gives you that high capacity and the same Phison architecture, but at a lesser price point. And again, all four of these drives are not only fully supported by PS5, but they also are, or obviously in the beta, even when PlayStation enable this feature. There is no way these 4 drives aren't going to be on that hot list, and I strongly recommend any of them for your next PlayStation 5 storage upgrade. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, click like. This has been a long old video to make. Click subscribe if you want to learn more stuff about this subject or stay abreast of further testing we've got coming later on with even more PCIe4 SSDs, and of course all my data storage videos as well. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if you did, and stay tuned for further content coming very soon. I will catch you next time.